For 27 years, Hollywood's greatest secret romance played out in the shadows. Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy shared 9 movies, countless hidden moments, and a love that could never be public. When he died in 1967, she couldn't even mourn him openly. Now, the truth emerges about their final days, the last supper she cooked him, his haunting final words, and why the woman who loved him for nearly 3 decades chose to say goodbye alone. Let's start with Katharine Hepburn. She was born on May 12, 1907, in Hartford, Connecticut. Her family was wealthy, bold, and very different from others. Her father, Dr. Thomas Hepburn, was a doctor who talked openly about health topics most avoided, like venereal diseases. Her mother, Katharine Martha Hepburn, fought for women's rights and birth control. Their home was always full of big ideas and important people. Katharine's childhood was far from normal. When she was 5, her parents shaved her head because they thought it would help her brain breathe. She often ran around the neighborhood without clothes, which shocked others, but not her parents. They encouraged her to speak up, even against authority, which got her expelled from school several times. Once, when she was 12, she led a protest against mandatory church attendance. The family's money meant they traveled often, and by age 14, Katharine had visited 23 countries and learned to speak 4 languages. Her life changed forever when she was 13. On April 3, 1921, she found her older brother, Tom, dead. It appeared he had taken his own life. This loss was a deep wound for Katharine, and for years, she even pretended her birthday was November 8, his birthday, instead of her real one. Despite the grief, her family talked openly about mental health, which was very rare back then. Katharine said this openness helped her deal with life's pressures later. Katharine loved acting from a young age. When she was 9, she wrote and performed a play in her family's barn. She made her own costumes and even added a dramatic fall at the end of the show, landing in a pile of hay. 50 kids came to watch, each paying a nickel. By 16, at Bryn Mawr School, she started a theater group called the Barnstormers. In their first play, Hamlet, she played the lead role and performed part of it, hanging upside down. The audience loved it. Later, the group performed bold plays, including one about labor rights, which got the whole cast suspended. But Katharine didn't stop. She took the play to local union halls and performed it there instead. After college, Katharine worked hard to get into New York theater, but it wasn't easy. She was fired from many roles, once for accidentally setting her co-star's wig on fire. Her big break finally came in 1932 with the play The Warrior's Husband. She had to leap downstairs carrying a stag on her shoulders for the role. To prepare, she trained with a circus strongman. At her audition, she added a somersault at the bottom, impressing everyone. The play was a hit, and audiences loved her energy and confidence. During one show, a spear hit her in the face and broke her nose. She reset it on stage and kept going, earning cheers from the crowd. Her performance caught the eye of RKO Pictures. They invited her to do a screen test for the movie A Bill of Divorcement. The first test went horribly. She knocked over lights, tore her dress, and hit the leading man so hard he got a nosebleed. She thought her chance was gone, but director George Cukor saw her potential. He convinced the studio to give her another try. This time, Katharine came prepared. She performed not just her part, but the entire script, even the male roles. Everyone was amazed. Filming began in September 1932. Katharine earned $1,500 a week and insisted on doing her own stunts. She even rewrote some of her lines, which annoyed her co-stars but made her performance stand out. The movie came out on September 30th, 1932, and critics loved her. The New York Times called her an actress with passion and deep understanding. Soon after, RKO signed her to a long-term contract, and Katharine Hepburn's incredible Hollywood career began. In 1933, she got the role in the movie Morning Glory. At that time, she was still new to Hollywood, and the role of Eva Lovelace wasn't even meant for her. It was supposed to go to Constance Bennett, a famous actress at RKO. But one day, Katharine saw the script on the producer's desk. She read it, loved it, and boldly told him, "I want this role." Her confidence worked. York, and she got the part. Before filming started, Katharine went through a serious health scare. She was very sick and had to have surgery because of a uterine problem. Everyone was worried for her, but she didn't give up. Just months later, she got out of bed to attend the premiere of one of her earlier movies, showing the determination that would define her career. When Morning Glory was finally filmed, it took only 17 days to shoot. The director let her act in order from beginning to end, which helped her bring the character to life. Katharine's performance was amazing. In 1934, she won the Oscar for Best Actress, only 2 years after starting her film career. She didn't even go to the ceremony, which became her thing later on. This was the fastest an actress had ever won an Oscar at that time. But things didn't stay easy. After her big win, Katharine's career hit a rough patch. From 1934 to 1938, she was in several movies that flopped. One of them, Bringing Up Baby, 1938, is now seen as a classic, but back then, it lost a lot of money. Other films like Stage Door and Holiday were well made, but didn't attract enough people to theaters. Things got so bad that in 1938, a group of theater owners called her box office poison in a public ad. This was a huge embarrassment for her. Part of the problem was Katharine's personality. She didn't act like a typical Hollywood star. She didn't wear makeup, often dressed in pants instead of dresses, and didn't play along with the press. Once, she even threw a photographer's camera into a river. People thought she was too stubborn and independent, which made her less popular. RKO ended her contract, and at 31 years old, her career seemed over. But instead of giving up, Katharine made a bold move. She used her savings to buy out her contract for $75,000, taking control of her future. Her comeback started with a play called The Philadelphia Story in 1939. It was written just for her by Philip Barry, and it became a huge hit on Broadway. Katharine saw this as her chance to return to Hollywood. With help from Howard Hughes, she bought the film rights to the play. Then, she made a smart deal with MGM. She sold them the rights, but with conditions. She had to star in the movie, and she got to choose the director and co-stars. MGM agreed, and Katharine picked George Cukor as the director, with Cary Grant and James Stewart as her co-stars. The movie came out in 1940 and was a massive success. It made millions of dollars and got Katharine another Oscar nomination. This film completely turned her career around. She went from being box office poison to one of the most popular stars in Hollywood. Her comeback showed her strength and how smart she was about taking control of her career. Meanwhile, Spencer Tracy was born on April 5, 1900, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His dad, John Edward Tracy, was a truck salesman, and his mom, Caroline Brown, had changed her religion to Christian Science. Spencer was a restless and wild kid. He hated school and caused trouble, which frustrated everyone around him. When he was 9, his parents sent him to live with Dominican nuns, hoping they could calm him down. Spencer later joked that the only reason he stayed in school was to learn how to read movie subtitles. Spencer's family moved a lot in Milwaukee, partly because his dad drank too much. Life wasn't easy, but Spencer found joy in movies. He would visit local theaters to watch films again and again, memorizing scenes so he could act them out for his friends. Movies became his escape, sparking a love that would later define his life. But school was still a mess for him. He switched schools at least 6 times, including a short stint in Kansas City, where his family lived for a few months. No matter where he went, he struggled to stick with academics. When he turned 18, World War I was still happening. Spencer and his friend Pat O'Brien joined the Navy, but Spencer never saw any battles. He spent his time at a Navy yard in Virginia and was discharged in 1919. After leaving the Navy, his dad pushed him to finish school. Spencer eventually went to Ripon College in Wisconsin, where he planned to study medicine. But everything changed when he acted in a college play. For the first time, Spencer felt like he'd found what he was meant to do. Before he became an actor, Spencer worked a bunch of odd jobs. He was a bellhop, carrying luggage in hotels, and a janitor, scrubbing floors and cleaning bathrooms. He even worked as a magician, performing small shows for local crowds. These jobs weren't glamorous, but they taught Spencer a lot about ordinary people. This understanding made his acting feel real and relatable later on. In 1930, Spencer got his big break on Broadway. He played a death row prisoner in a play called The Last Mile. The performance caught the eye of a famous director, John Ford, who cast him in the movie Up the River. This was Spencer's start in Hollywood. Over 5 years, he made 25 films for Fox, but none made him a star. He was stuck in small, forgettable roles. roles, though a few movies like The Power and the Glory, 1933, hinted at what he could do. Spencer eventually grew tired of being overlooked. In 1935, he quit his contract with Fox and took a big risk. It paid off when MGM gave him a chance. His first movie there, Fury, 1936, was a hit. It showed off Spencer's ability to express deep emotions in a way that felt completely natural. From there, his career took off. Spencer made history by becoming the first actor to win 2 Oscars in a row. The first was for Captain's Courageous, 1937, where he played a kind-hearted fisherman. The second was for Boys Town, 1938, where he played a caring priest. These roles proved how versatile he was, and audiences loved him. By the 1950s, Spencer was a legend. He kept taking on challenging roles, like the father in Father of the Bride, 1950, and the tough sheriff in Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955. His natural, subtle acting style inspired a whole new generation of performers. However, Tracy's life was full of ups and downs. He married Louise Treadwell on September 12, 1923, after meeting her in a theater group. Their romance was quick, and they got married in a hurry between 2 performances. Soon after, their first child, John, was born on June 26, 1924. At first, they were overjoyed, but that happiness didn't last long. When John was 10 months old, Louise noticed something strange. He didn't react to loud noises, even when a door slammed near his crib. They found out he was completely deaf. This news devastated the couple. Despite the heartbreak, Louise decided to help John in every way she could. She learned about deaf education and worked tirelessly to support him. Spencer, on the other hand, struggled to cope. He had a hard time bonding with John, and the guilt drove him to drink even more. Years later, they learned John's deafness was caused by a genetic condition called Usher syndrome, which also led to vision problems. Still, John grew up strong. He learned to speak, went to school, worked at Disney, and even said he lived a full life. But Spencer always felt like he had failed as a father. That guilt stayed with him forever. Their second child, Susie, was born on July 1st, 1932, during a tough time in their marriage. Spencer was focused on his acting career and spent less time at home. By then, he and Louise were already separated. They got back together briefly in 1935, but the marriage never fully recovered. By the 1940s, they were living apart. Spencer stayed in hotels or rented homes, while Louise stayed in the family house. They never divorced, though. Spencer's Catholic faith made it impossible for him to consider it, and Louise stayed loyal, even though they were no longer together. Even apart, Spencer supported Louise in her efforts to help other deaf children. In 1942, she started the John Tracy Clinic to help families like theirs. Spencer gave money to the clinic and often praised her work. When he died in 1967, he left his entire estate to Louise, their 2 kids, and his brother. It showed that, even with their separation, he still cared deeply about his family. Spencer also fought a long battle with alcohol. He drank heavily, often going on long binges. He would lock himself in hotel rooms for days with bottles of whiskey. Sometimes he wouldn't even leave the bathtub, just drinking non-stop. His drinking caused problems with his work and led to violent outbursts. Once, during a film shoot in 1934, he went missing for 2 weeks, delaying the production and getting sued. His depression made everything worse. He felt tortured by guilt over his son, his marriage, and his fate. He barely slept and relied on dangerous drugs to get through the day. In September 1941, Katharine Hepburn met Spencer Tracy for the first time on the set of Woman of the Year at MGM Studios. This meeting led to a 26-year romance and an unforgettable Hollywood partnership. Hepburn was 34, recently divorced, and known for her confidence and unique style, always wearing trousers and loafers. Tracy, at 41, was already a star at MGM, though he was unhappily married. When they met, Hepburn joked, "I'm afraid I'm a bit tall for you, Mr. Tracy." Producer Joseph L. Mankiewicz quickly replied, "Don't worry, Kate, he'll cut you down to size." This playful exchange hinted at their dynamic, both in their films and real life. Hepburn had actually planned this meeting. She had wanted to work with Tracy for years, even trying to cast him in the Philadelphia Story a year earlier. When that didn't happen, she convinced MGM to buy Woman of the Year for $250,000, splitting the cost between herself and the script, as long as she could choose the co-star and director. But their first interaction wasn't as smooth as the story often suggests. Tracy, known for being moody, didn't like Hepburn at first. He thought her accent was annoying and found her manner too affected. He even told the director, George Stevens, "How can I do a picture with a woman who has dirt under her fingernails and who is all hands?" For the first week of filming, their relationship was cold, and they barely spoke off camera. But by the second week, everything changed. They became inseparable, laughing together and calling each other Spence and Kate. Hepburn admitted later that she was in awe of Tracy's acting talent and wanted to prove herself. Tracy, meanwhile, found Hepburn's directness refreshing, but was also annoyed by her upper-class airs. Despite these mixed feelings, their chemistry on set was undeniable. Director George Stevens described it as natural and effortless. Even their arguments added to their connection. At one point, Tracy got angry at Hepburn for touching him during a scene. He snapped, "Don't touch me unless it's in the script." Hepburn, unfazed, began deliberately brushing against him in every take, which added a playful tension to their scene. By the third week of filming, their bond was obvious to everyone. They spent long hours together after work, often sitting in Tracy's car at the studio until late at night. This raised eyebrows since Tracy was still married. His wife, Louise Tracy, visited the set in early October, creating an awkward tension. Hepburn avoided her entirely, staying in her dressing room that day. Their on-screen partnership became legendary. Over 25 years, they made 9 films together, starting with Woman of the Year in 1942 and ending with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967, just 17 days before Tracy's death. Their films ranged from romantic comedies to dramas, showing their incredible versatility. MGM produced most of their movies, but their final 2, Desk Set and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, were made at other studios. This shift reflected the decline of MGM's dominance and proved their appeal went beyond one studio. Some of their best-known films include Adam's Rib, 1949, and Pat and Mike, 1952, both directed by George Cukor. In Adam's Rib, they played married lawyers on opposite sides of a court case, tackling themes of gender equality in a funny yet meaningful way. One unforgettable scene features a surprise witness, a woman who can lift Tracy's character over her head, humorously highlighting the film's feminist themes. In Pat and Mike, Hepburn played a skilled athlete, showing off her real-life talents in sports like golf and tennis. In one memorable scene, her character even defends Tracy's from 2 thugs, reversing traditional gender roles. Their final film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, was their biggest commercial success. It dealt with interracial marriage, a controversial topic at the time. One emotional scene features Tracy delivering a heartfelt monologue about love and marriage. Hepburn, silently listening with tears in her eyes, later said she could never watch that scene after Tracy passed away. Their films were usually well received, both critically and commercially. Woman of the Year was a hit, earning over $2.7 million and revitalizing Hepburn's career after a rough period in the late 1930s. Adam's Rib received glowing reviews and remains one of their most beloved films, while Guess Who's Coming to Dinner grossed over $56 million, becoming the highest-grossing film of 1967. Not all their movies were hits, though. The Sea of Grass, 1947, was poorly received, and even director Elia Kazan disliked it. Over time, however, some of their lesser-known films, like Pat and Mike, have been re-evaluated and are now considered classics. In terms of awards, their collaborations earned numerous accolades. Hepburn received Academy Award nominations for Woman of the Year and Pat and Mike, while Tracy was nominated for State of the Union. Hepburn won her second Oscar for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, although this was more for her overall career than specifically for this film. Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy shared a love that lasted nearly 30 years. It wasn't a typical relationship. While they were deeply connected emotionally, their physical closeness seemed to fade after the first few years. But this didn't weaken their bond. Hepburn once said she felt something unique for Tracy and would have done anything for him. Their relationship wasn't easy, though. Tracy battled alcoholism and depression, and Hepburn often cared for him during his darkest moments. Once, at a hotel, Tracy hit her during a drunken episode. Hepburn didn't even mention it to him and stayed by his side, showing how much she loved him. They kept their love a secret because Tracy was married and his Catholic faith wouldn't allow him to divorce his wife, Louise Treadwell. To avoid suspicion, they lived in separate homes and even stayed in different hotels when traveling. On movie sets, they arrived separately and didn't show their connection in public. Tracy once joked they had mastered the art of being invisible. The studios helped them keep the secret too. Back then, scandals could ruin careers, so studio bosses controlled the press and made sure reporters didn't write about their affair. affair. Still, people in Hollywood knew. Co-stars and crew members often saw their closeness. Gene Kelly remembered seeing them sitting together during lunch breaks, holding hands and talking. But outside of Hollywood, most people didn't know. Even gossip columnists, who usually loved scandals, stayed quiet because of pressure from the studios. Spencer Tracy's health started to fall apart in the 1960s. Years of hard living and illness finally caught up with him. By 1963, when he was 63 years old, he had serious problems. In 1965, things got even worse. Tracy needed emergency surgery for his prostate. After the operation, he fell into a coma for 10 days. Many people thought he wouldn't survive. He eventually woke up, but he was much weaker. By 1966, his heart caused him so much pain that he often had to go to the hospital. His diabetes caused nerve pain that never went away. He had lost a lot of weight and was very frail. Because of this, Tracy turned down big movie roles. He missed out on starring in The Cincinnati Kid. His last big movie before Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was It's a Mad, 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 Mad World in 1963. Even then, he could only work a few hours a day. Everyone thought his acting career was over, but in 1967, he surprised everyone and agreed to one last role, working again with Katharine Hepburn. Hepburn was more than a co-star during these years. She put her own career aside to take care of Tracy. She moved into a cottage near his home so she could be close to him. Every day, she cooked for him, gave him his medication, and helped him with tasks he couldn't manage on his own. Tracy needed more than a dozen medications for his heart, diabetes, and other problems. Hepburn kept track of everything and even stayed up late researching ways to help him feel better. When his drinking got out of control, she threw away all the alcohol in the house and made sure he couldn't get more. It wasn't easy for her. Tracy's health got worse, and it was painful to watch. She once said it felt like seeing a great king slowly lose everything, but she stayed by his side. She kept him away from the press and made excuses when he couldn't go out. If they went to a restaurant, she rented the whole place so he could be comfortable. Tracy finished filming Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967. Just 17 days later, he died. On the night before, Hepburn made him his favorite meal, and they talked about the movie. He joked about not winning another Oscar. Later that night, he couldn't sleep and went to the kitchen to make tea. Hepburn heard him and asked if he needed help. He told her to go back to bed. Those were his last words to her. A little while later, she heard a crash. She found Tracy on the floor with a broken teacup beside him. She tried to help, but it was too late. He died of a heart attack early that morning. Hepburn called his wife, Louise, first, then quietly left the house before the press arrived. She let his family mourn in public while she grieved alone. Katharine Hepburn didn't go to Spencer Tracy's funeral on June 13, 1967. Even though they had been together for years, she made this choice because she respected Tracy's wife, Louise, and their family. Instead of going to the funeral, Hepburn said her goodbyes in private. The day before the funeral, on June 12th, she visited the mortuary where Tracy's body was. She went early in the morning, arriving at 6 a.m. with her secretary, Phyllis Wilborn. The staff gave her privacy, and she spent nearly an hour alone with Tracy. She later said, "I stood by his coffin and said goodbye to the man I had loved for 27 years. I touched his face. It was terribly cold. That was when I realized he was really gone." Even after Tracy's death, Hepburn stayed silent about their relationship for many years. She didn't publicly talk about it until 1983, after Louise Tracy passed away. For 16 years, she avoided questions about their romance. When people brought up Tracy, she would only talk about his talent as an actor and their work together in movies. She didn't want to cause any harm to his family or his legacy. During this time, Hepburn kept a gold ring Tracy had given her. She wore it as a quiet reminder of their love. Sometimes, during interviews, she would touch the ring when his name came up. It was a small, private gesture that showed how much he still meant to her. When Hepburn finally spoke about their relationship in her autobiography, she simply said, "I loved Spencer Tracy. I would have done anything for him." This one sentence summed up everything she had kept private for so long. It showed the depth of her love and the sacrifices she made to protect his family and memory. In her later years, Hepburn opened up more about their life together. She talked about how she supported Tracy through his struggles with alcoholism and depression. She shared that she often found him in dark moments and made it her mission to help him. She once said, "I loved him and I wanted him to be okay." Even though they were so close, they never lived together full-time. Hepburn believed that keeping separate homes gave them both the independence they needed while still staying connected. Hepburn also reflected on the pain their relationship might have have caused Louis. She admitted, "I'm not proud that I was a party to causing pain to another human being." This showed her regret about the situation, even though she truly loved Tracy. At the same time, she shared sweet memories of their time together, like how he called her Red because of her hair, or how they spent quiet evenings reading scripts together. These small moments gave a glimpse into the love they shared. Until the end of her life, Hepburn believed Tracy was the greatest actor she had ever known. She spoke with pride about his work in films like Judgment at Nuremberg and their last movie together, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Her admiration for his talent and the love she felt for him never faded, even decades after he was gone.